Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and today I'll be starting with a song with my horrible voice. It's the Return of the Mac, Return of the Mac. I know this is the only news show that gets started with a song from the 90s, but Return of the Mac, I mean, hey, great track. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say, it's the comeback of Nigeria that Nigerians actually didn't know that they were waiting for. The return of the Mac Daddy himself, Yahaya Bello. Now, this saga has entered into the thrilling second season. After his much-anticipated reappearance from political purgatory, Bello has graced our screens with all the drama and, might I add, zero chill as well, all while wearing a smile and cheering to the crowd as he appears in court. As Nigerians collectively hum Mac Morrison's 1990s hit, which, by the way, Return of the Mac arguably is the most iconic one-hit wonder of our times. Well, Bello's one-hit blunder, an alleged 80 billion naira fraud, is stealing the show. In true Nollywood style, although I prefer a Hollywood rendition, the EFCC kicked off their pursuit of justice, but not without hiccups. Of course, this is Nigeria. The courtroom theatrics hit a high when the judge reportedly stormed out, leaving everyone gasping, waiting for a plot twist. Now, let's not forget the EFCC's attempts to prosecute Bello in a lawyer-less vacuum, a bold move that was predictably shut down. Now, Nigerians are watching with popcorn in hand, wondering just how this APC on APC showdown will go. Will the ruling party truly burn its own bridges, or is this just another episode of political immunity, the Nigerian Chronicle? We've seen all the seasons. But wait, as this soap opera unfolds, the president decides to throw us a curveball with a shiny new refurbished refinery revival plotline. Yay, what timing! Port Harcourt Refinery is finally being dusted off and switched on again, sparking cautious optimism among citizens groaning under the weight of petrol prices. However, let's be real, the refinery's contributions to our fuel supply is barely enough to fill your neighbor's generator tank. Trust me, it's but a drop in the entire equation of things, just like we are pencil in the hands of the creator. While I Dinuga Productions. Thank you very much. Now, I hear it is barely enough to even impact prices, so no, it's not what you were hoping or wishing for. We're still stuck with high Dangote prices, whether you like it or not. We're here, and we're going to survive it. Now, the president has thankfully ordered the resuscitation of the Warrior and Kaduna refinery, so let's hope that all this isn't just, political cliffhanger from the Yahaya story to distract us from the final outcome of that saga, because we refuse to forget. Not this time. We want justice. Let's hope that the PH refinery coming back to life is an actual relief plan, at least maybe for logistics, not the prices. Thus, in the spirit of celebrations, let's give ourselves a round of applause. Yes, thank you very much. Here at News Central, it's award season, and we've bagged a few shiny plaques ourselves, proving that even in the turbulent times, excellence shines through. While I joke about keeping the plaques, for safekeeping, of course, on the show today, we salute the brilliant individuals who brought us these honors. Your News Central reporters are apparently on fire, even if I say so myself. Now today, my plot twist, I'm joined by the ever-dashing Usman, yay! Filling in for Judith, who, let's face it, may or may not be giving pidgin lessons to Emmanuel Macron. Poor Emmanuel Macron. I mean, if Judith's Pidgin 101 makes it to Paris, let's pray that Nigeria is spared an international linguistic scandal, because I don't think her pidgin English is exportable enough. What do you think, Dashin? Perhaps? Maybe? When I get back there, we're going to talk about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, grab your coffees, sit tight, and let's dive into today's Breakfast Extra, where a little satire serves as an appetizer for your mornings. Hey, we're anything but boring. We'll be back with the dailies.
Well, there you have it. It's, the perfect prologue served hot and spicy by Mazino Appeal. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get ready to dive into the meaty stories shaping today's discourse. It is a busy day, folks, and, we've got a lot on our plates. Now, first of all, we'll dissect the evolving saga of Yahaya Bello, the alleged 80 billion naira fraud, the courtroom drama, and the EFCC's seemingly endless hurdles. Now, will this be a breakthrough in accountability or just another slow dance with justice? You know, just as Mazino has actually danced for us this morning. And then we shift to the Port Harcourt Refinery. Nigerians are cautiously optimistic as the plant comes alive, even though some have actually said, you know, not really, that hasn't happened yet. But is this a real solution or just a drop in an ocean of high petrol prices? We'll also discuss the president's directive to revive the Warri and Kaduna refineries. Could this finally ease Nigeria's fuel logistics crisis, or do we still have to depend on CNG? Now, from refineries to reports, President Tinubu is all smiles over the latest NBS figures signaling economic progress. But with the CBN hiking interest rates to a staggering 27.5%, you know, and fears of economic contraction looming, the big question is, how do these numbers translate to everyday relief for Nigerians? And finally, we'll spotlight News Central's latest accolades during the season of awards celebrating excellence amidst the chaos. And of course, a warm welcome to Bettina, our award beneficiary, and Ekemini Jane, who joins us today as we keep Judith in our thoughts and our prayers as she schools Macron in pidgin English.
Let me say that's a joke. She really didn't go to France, but we'd like to think of it so, just so everybody has something to chew on while
Yes,
she's away.
indeed.
But then, did you see the tweet between the two presidents? Macron had welcomed Tinubu to France with a pidgin English text on his X handle. And Tinubu also replied in pidgin English, which was very elaborate.
Yeah.
However, so I was wondering exactly who's translating for Macron. This one is a bit much.
It's actually quite exciting. I could say a number of them because, you know, I don't know if you watched the welcome dinner where you had the band singing to P Square's Chop My Money, and it was quite interesting. They did a really good job. You know, it was like the karaoke version, but, you know, it was really nice.
I must also spotlight the excitement when it comes to Macron and Nigeria. Remember, he was here once, just down the road.
Yeah, he was.
You know, went over to the what is it, the shrine, I think. And he also keeps talking about his time as an intern here at the embassy in Nigeria. So I think we've got a good relationship going with France already. And his excitement at receiving the president.
Of course, Nigeria is a beautiful place, and everyone wants to come to Nigeria. They want to experience the culture and everything. So,
come to Nigeria. Well, we'll get a tagline for that after, but come to Nigeria starts it off. In any case, let's find out what the front pages for the newspapers are telling today. We're going to be starting off with one of the major dailies in our very plenty lineup. And we're starting with the Daily Independence. Now, front and center, Daily Independence, these headlines meet you. People living with HIV hopeful as indigenous medicines proffer cures. That's encouraging, if you ask me. FG must invest in R&D to, well, produce drugs for local health solutions, Prof. Emeje says, and drug development requires strategic resource deployment, say researchers. And Okonjo-Iweala reappointment as WTO DG, a demonstration of trust by international community, say Tinubu. And if you stay to tomorrow, in fact, tomorrow's show will be starting with something very interesting on Okonjo-Iweala, so I hope that you guys join us there. Akeredolu left legatees of his profound philanthropy, says Okedina, and also customers besiege banks for cash ahead of Yuletide. You bet. How are you getting ready, Dashin, for the Yuletide season? Anything special? Are you doing anything?
Not really. You know, I would have to be working on that day. It's a week.
Yeah.
It's a week.
Excuse for money no day. I understand. It's okay.
Money day.
It's okay. We're all feeling the crunch. Why appeal court quashed rape conviction of Lagos Dr. Femi Olale? That I would love to read. A very interesting one. From life imprisonment to quashing it totally. He doesn't get to do that again on page 5. Perhaps you might also want to check that one out. UBA Group to commence full banking operations in France. And Tinubu, Akpabio, Jonathan, others pay final respect as Governor Eno Berry's wife in Akwa Ibom. Akeredolu left. Oh, no, I think I took that one already. I think that's it for the Saturday Independent. What are we moving on to now, Dasha?
All right, now let's take a look at the Saturday Nation newspaper. And you have, you know, the lead story there, you know, talking about how Gachagua attack was planned. You know, he was attacked recently, and the paper actually talked about how it was actually a planned one. And just at the top of the paper there, you'd find a story there on love for safari rally still runs deep for Cancunen. Now, let's take a look at some more stories on the front page of Saturday Nation. There's this one that talks about from boom to gloom and why tea bonuses have lost their flavor. I'm a huge tea fan, by the way.
Oh.
And, you know, it needs to get back its flavor.
Well, true.
Say,
I
yeah.
agree with you. I had too much tea while I was a kid, so I think I've had enough for 100 years, hence no more
With all
tea.
the flavors available?
You mean there's more than one?
Yeah, there is. I'm not talking about, you know, milk
I'm just
and
used
cocoa.
to the yellow one we were introduced to as kids. That's it. That's the definition.
Right. Yeah, I understand. All right, so now I might have to reintroduce you, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
All right, now let's move on. We have first comes love, then marriage, and then well-timed family. And, you know, taking a look at more stories in business there, there's a story there that talks about contracted insurance companies not paying injured police officers. We also have an education there that says public universities extend semester to recover lost time. And also more stories, you know, when you take a look at the Saturday Nation newspaper.
All right. So now we're going to be moving on to our next daily. And we're moving on to the Saturday Times this morning. Front and center, unconscious patients recover after Abia government intervention. Very interesting story that I would like to see. And at the bottom, there's more. Tinubu reacts to Okonjo-Iweala's WTO reappointments, which I think is just a boss move. Rocketman backing at Davido won't fix Nigeria. What was your thoughts on the Davido submission when he was asked about the state of Nigerian economy?
Okay, and how he said he wouldn't advise those abroad to actually come back. Well, I think in some way he was actually being truthful, but I don't think as an ambassador of the country you should actually, you know, speak about the country that way. It should always be positive.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Osage had a very interesting submission during the week when he told what Nigerians were telling about. And he said, hey, whether you like it or not, as soon as you walk out of that living room where you just saw him tell that, you walk outside, you're still met with the issues that make Nigeria a struggling or challenging place to live. So him saying it, according to him, was what we needed to hear, what the world needed to know, the realization we needed to come to. So different ways to see it.
I think Nigerians already realized that. You know, every country has its, you know, peculiarities.
Exactly.
You know, no country is perfect. Even the U.S. where he was, you know, they have their own issues.
Yeah.
Do you get? But then
the reason why he didn't make it there and came over to Nigeria and made it here, whether you like it or not. And now he's bringing on other artists to become Afro stars like Chris Brown. Let's move on. There's still more here. EPL, Maresca tips 3 teams, 4 title ahead of Chelsea. And I think it's a very sparse Saturday Times front page this morning. Let's move on to the next one, shall we, Dashin? Oh, I'm being told that we can't do that because we've taken so much time talking about Davido and the rest. But it's all good. Well, let's let you guys know that coming up is going to be a very interesting, our very first report for the morning here on Breakfast Extra. Do stay tuned. It's Mazino and Dashin, and we'll be back with that one, and we'll sink our teeth into it. Welcome once again. It's Breakfast Extra, our very first big report this morning. The long-awaited courtroom debut of Yahaya Bello, the embattled former governor of Kogi State. Well, that unfolded this week with all the drama, and Nigerians have come to expect that anyway. Now, after months of dodging the EFCC's grasp, Bello was finally arraigned, facing charges of misappropriating a jaw-dropping 80 billion naira. It was a spectacle of legal and political intrigue. The EFCC struggling to prosecute him amidst procedural bottlenecks, including their contentious attempts to proceed without proper legal representation move, which was swiftly rejected by the court. Now, Bello, a card-carrying member of the ruling APC, is now in custody for the next 2 weeks, giving the nation a rare glimpse into the ruling party's willingness to hold one of its very own to account. But with the EFCC's track record and the labyrinth of legal hurdles already emerging, Nigerians are left wondering, is this the start of a landmark case for justice or just another episode of political theatrics?
Well, joining us to break this down, we actually have Emmanuel Bagudu, our esteemed News Central correspondent, who's been following this case closely from the courts. And we also have Uthman Isa Tochukwu, Esquire, a seasoned legal practitioner who will guide us through the complexities of the legal processes ahead. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for joining us, Uthman.
Thank you for having me.
Uthman, if you first of all just paint a legal picture of exactly where Yahaya Bello finds himself, and if you can explain this loyalist case that we heard of from the courts.
Well, just before Uthman actually, responds to that, we'll take a look at the package by Emmanuel Bagudu and see how it goes. Stay with us.
The embattled ex-governor Yahaya Bello appeared in court alongside his alleged accomplices for the first time after resisting arrest by the anti-graft agency. Bello pleaded not guilty to the 16-count charge leveled against him by the EFCC, bordering on conspiracy, illegal possession of several properties, and criminal breach of trust amounting to 110 billion naira. After taking their pleas, Joseph Daudu, counsel to Bello, moved the bail application for the former governor, but counsel to the EFCC opposed the application, arguing that the application had been invalid since October. Making further clarifications, the counsel to the defendant says that the only relevant application before the court was the motion for the bail in respect to the first defendant, which is the ex-governor, which was filed on November the 22nd. The court then fixed December the 10th to rule on the bail application. Attempts to get the reaction of the counsel failed as they refused making comments. The complexity involved in the ex-governor Yahaya Bello case is the fact that the ex-governor has evaded arrest several times. He has refused to turn up in court despite invitation from court, and now the EFCC has found an opportunity of arraigning him. And of course, the time given between now and will give the EFCC ample opportunity, ample time to be able to file their processes very well, to be able to be sure that they are going to have the governor from the beginning to the end of the case. Here in Abuja, for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
All right, well, there you have it. Emmanuel Bagudu has actually, painted a picture of what is actually happening in the Yahaya Bello and EFCC case. Now, let's come back to you, Uthman. I think Mazino did ask you a question just before the package. If you could go ahead and, respond to that now.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. In law, right, every offense is bailable with certain exceptions, right? Now, the exceptions to some of the offenses that are not bailable offenses are capital offenses. And like we know, in law, capital offenses are offenses that comes with death penalty, right? Now, when we want to x-ray the situation of the ex-governor of Kogi State, Malam Yahaya Bello, we would ask ourselves, what nature of offense had he been, accused of, or is he being tried of? He's been tried of financial crimes. And then in law, the question would have been, is it a bailable offense or not? The answer to this question is yes, it is a bailable offense. But being bailable offense is one thing, and another thing is whether the court can grant that bail, because bail on its own is discretionary and exclusively the right of court to so do. If my lord examined the circumstances surrounding, his allegations, and he's unsatisfactory to grant bail in that instance, he may refuse to grant him bail, even though ordinarily it is a bailable offense. But the issue at the moment is on the fact that the matter had been adjourned to 10th of December for the courts to take on the bail. The question that may arise on that day is whether or not he's entitled to bail. And if you look at the surrounding circumstances, you may want to agree that he's entitled to bail because the offense is a bailable offense. But then again, the court has the discretion to grant that bail or not to grant it.
All right, now, Uthman, you did shed light on the legalities, of keeping Yahaya Bello in EFCC custody, for the time being. But what does this mean, for the timeline of his trial?
Well, there is nothing wrong in keeping him in EFCC custody for now, pending the determination of the trial, except that bail is granted on hopefully on December 10th when the court sits on the matter. He will have to remain there in compliance with the order of court. He can always be coming from EFCC custody to court to face his trial and all of that. But I'm hopeful that perhaps my Lord may be lenient to grant him bail, considering the circumstances, also looking at the fact that he was an ex-governor. There are some certain conditions that comes with bail, especially when you look at the status of the accused person. In this instance case, he was an ex-governor. I do not think he had been before alleged of this kind of crimes before. These are factors that my Lord are going to look at and then consider whether or not he's entitled to bail. But as it is, in any case, he still have to remain within EFCC custody pending the determination of his trial.
Now, Uthman, it's a shame that we can't go into the details of the legal proceedings that are happening inside of court because, I mean, this would be sub judice. But let's talk about, as a legal expert, let's talk about how you've assessed the EFCC strategy here in this case so far. Are there possible lapses that could affect the prosecution at the end, or have they carried out their strategy properly?
Like you said, you had always, you had preempted me already. Otherwise, I would have wanted to say that going into the substance of the attitude of the trial, the prosecution, may not actually be too proper at this time, looking at the fact that the case is still pending before the court, so that will not be caught up with sub judice. However, I had expressed my displeasure over the manner through which EFCC is handling this case. Initially, the chairman of EFCC went on air to hold what we may call a press conference, calling out the suspect and all of that. There are certain things that we must have to know. The fact that someone has been accused of crime does not mean in law that he committed that crime. He's still an accused person, and he's still enjoying that right of innocence until proven guilty. So on the basis of that, it becomes improper for you, the prosecution, to go online or on the media to begin to call out the suspect at that point. There are certain rights that the Constitution had given to the suspect to enjoy. So in that instance, I wasn't too comfortable with the manner through which EFCC went about it. You are the prosecutor, you should conduct your investigation and bring your facts to bear before the court. But I believe that now that the accused person has been arraigned, the proper procedure should be followed, and then we'll allow the court to take a decision on the matter, and we'll all see the outcome.
Okay, now talking about seeing the outcome, we do know that, Yahaya Bello is actually an APC member, and, is it a fair question if his arraignment is a genuine pursuit of justice or a potential case for political sabotage?
No, I think this question is rhetorical. It's rhetorical in the sense that it has answered itself. Otherwise, the position that Mr. Yahaya Bello holds in that party, and they are the party in power. If the party was, or the administration per se, was going to look at the other side, they may not even arraign him in the first place. But just to show you that nobody is above the law and everybody is equal before the law, it is just proper that the right thing should be done, regardless of whose horse is God. I do not think that we are envisaging any form of favor from the ruling party. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been arraigned in the first place. And they know how to go about their things. I believe that he's going to face the law squarely. And if he is found guilty, why not? He would be convicted appropriately.
Okay. Uthman, let's talk about what happened in court again when he was brought back to court on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Now, he had told that he was only informed of that process the day before, and hence that resulted in a lawyer-less situation. So if you'd first of all explain what this lawyer-less situation is and how that's affecting the proceedings of everything that's happening and the implications of that as well.
I don't understand what they mean that he was just informed that day. Once you are being served a notice of hearing, right, that you are being summoned before the court, of course, you are going there knowing that you are going to be arraigned, to be asked a question on some certain form of, allegations against you. So if you are being put on that dock and then you are being asked a question whether or not you are guilty, it is just proper that should be the first time you are hearing such question, and it's just for you to take your plea, whether guilty or not. If you say you are guilty, my Lord will go ahead and convict you based on the extant provisions of the law. Or if you say you are not guilty, then we'll go into the nitty-gritty of the trial. And that is what had happened in court. Because the first thing to do is that when an accused person or a suspect is being arraigned in court, you take your plea. If you say that you are not guilty of that particular offense, then your lawyer will just have to apply for bail at that point. So if my Lord has the latitude to take the bail, my Lord listens and takes the bail on the merit. If he finds merit on the bail, he grants the bail. If not, he would give an order for the accused person to be remanded in custody, which is what played out in court. So when they say it was lawyerless, I do not think so, because the court sat and then reminded. It is based on order of court now that the ex-governor is now being kept in EFCC custody. I do not think that there's anything lawyerless about it.
Mm. And then there's the case or the argument of the time that he spent evading the EFCC, which also resulted in the time that we've also waited for him to show up in court. Any penalties for this, perhaps? I'm wondering if this is also part of the process.
No, I think that they were just being political. In all fairness to the ex-governor, I mean, we have security agencies in this country. I do not think that there is any precedent of this country where any accused person would be within the bounds of Nigeria that the security agency cannot trace it. The burden is upon, who have accused a particular person that has committed a crime. The burden lies on you to go and pick the person wherever he is. In fact, the law has even extended it to the level where even if you go outside Nigeria, you can apply for extradition and it will bring you back to the country for trial. So I don't want to subscribe to that narrative that he was hiding, he was running away from where? We have immigration service here, we have custom, we have EFCC, we have Nigerian police, we have the Interpol in the Nigerian police to track wherever the suspect may have gone to. I think that with all due respect to EFCC, they didn't do their due diligence, or they didn't want to pick him up as at when due, because at the moment he left the office, Section 308 was no longer applicable. Section 308 talked about immunity of a sitting governor and the rest of them. So the moment he left office, Section 308 ceases to exist on his part. And we can apply every mechanism possible within the law to track an accused person. I do not subscribe to that.
All right. Now, when you said, the EFCC didn't do their job, I was actually tempted to ask, why it took so long for Yahaya Bello to actually present himself to them in the first place if he wasn't actually running. But then I would actually love to ask again. I know the case is still in court, but I would want you to predict how you feel, this case will be resolved, and if you feel or foresee some likely hurdles for the EFCC in seeing this case through the conviction.
This would be going into the substance of the case.
I suspect.
How the amount to sub judice. I cannot preempt the court. I cannot preempt the court. But what I know is that 10th of December has been fixed for them to listen to the bail application, not to listen to the substance of the case. Now, what happens on that 10th of December would determine the next movement for that particular matter. If my Lord listens to the bail application and is convincing enough, my Lord, at his discretion, can grant the bail. Okay. Otherwise, he may have to be remanded pending the trial. I cannot comment on the outcome because that would amount to sub judice, and I wouldn't want the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee to summon me.
We understand this. Thank you very much. At least him being remanded, we know where to find him this time. Let me welcome Emmanuel Bagudu. Emmanuel, you're welcome. Thank you very much for representing us in court. Well, not at the docks, but at least as News Central reporter. Do tell us, walk us through the key moments that perhaps didn't make your report in court on the day of his arraignment.
Yes, one of the very sensitive issues is the fact that you remember that Justice Kekere Okun, that's a new CJN, have actually warned lawyers to stop making comments while trial is ongoing. Of course, you will notice that reporting court cases have been so difficult these days because counsels are not talking on camera. So we were not able to, get to speak to either the EFCC prosecutors and then, of course, the defendants of the Yahaya Bello. It wasn't possible for us, probably because of the sensitivity of the case. Now, the issue of Yahaya Bello is the fact that the EFCC have been so desperate to make a case for themselves. They've been desperate to actually prove that they are actually that anti-graft agency that Nigerians are trusting. And it's quite a very huge achievement that they have been able to arraign ex-governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State. And that is so because if you look at the way the ex-governor has been behaving, he has been evading arrest. He has his security, that his successor security officials have over several times confronted the officials of the EFCC to actually protect him. That's talking about the current governor of Kogi State, Usman Ododo. So it is something the EFCC is proud of, and they will want to keep this trial, ongoing. They want to keep this trial they want to continue this trial without any issue. So the point there is that everybody is looking at what is going to come out of the case, because there's a lot of high expectations, and that the EFCC cannot compromise on this issue. And then there's something that's very important I need to state. On the day of the trial, when the Justice Mary Aneni, that's Mary Ann Aneni, actually ordered the remand of Bello, the EFCC officials were so happy about that, because as far as they're concerned, that's an achievement. At least they will have him in the next 10 days, in the next 11 days with them, and that they're going to carry out a lot of investigation, and that they are happy. They are very, very happy that this issue has been nipped in the bud, and that they are no longer being seen as a political organization. So in the next 10 days, all eyes are going to be on how this trial is going to continue. So it's a case of the EFCC trying to make itself relevant, it's trying to make itself clean, trying to show Nigerians that they are responsible, they are on top of their game. Yeah.
Well, but then, Emmanuel, how significant is the court's rejection of the EFCC's request to, prosecute without lawyers in attendance? Do you think that this signifies a tough road ahead for the anti-graft agency as well?
No, not at all. They are all these things are political gimmicks. They're all political gimmicks. And then, of course, the EFCC is what the EFCC is trying to make us understand is the fact that whether, irrespective of the situation, they have successfully got Bello at their palm. That's the message they're trying to pass across. And everything that will happen, anything that will happen in this case will determine after 10th of December. Will be determined after 10th of December. So it is too early for us to start, making assumption of how this case is going to be. But from 10th of December, we're going to see, how this case is going to look like. What the EFCC up to, or what is the fate of the people of Kogi State, whether justice will be achieved. Yeah.
Well, Emmanuel Bagudu, want to say thank you very much as well to Uthman, who joined us earlier. Thank you very much for actually, giving us a bit of time.
Well, just before, Emmanuel
You've
actually
got an extra
leaves.
question?
Yes, I would love to ask, how you think the public and political community, have actually reacted to Yahaya Bello's appearance in court.
Yes. In fact, we made mention of an incident that happened at the Maitama High Court, where when the EFCC officials had an accident just in front of the court after they had been given opportunity to take Yahaya Bello in their custody. Now we had instances of supporters. Yahaya Bello came in to court with his supporters, and then unfortunately for him, there are people who do not like him. So it's a kind of clash. So in the process of taking him back to custody, there was a clash. The EFCC officials were trying to escape from supporters who were kind of trying to distract them from doing their job, and then they had an accident. So it's a mixed feeling, it's a mixed reaction, and it's expected to continue like that up to the end of the trial.
I was hoping that Uthman could also respond to that, because it seemed that you had a response to that from earlier. Uthman, go ahead, please.
Yes, I was going to say that we all know that this is a very interesting case, and it's highly profiled case in that matter. So what I only urge the EFCC to do their due diligence and resist to be intimidated by anybody, resist to be intimidated by whatever may come from the state, because we know the attitude of most of our politicians in this country. Each time they are accused of a certain crime and they are being taken to court, you see people being bought to go and show placards to campaign against it and all of that. The law must take its course. Let us allow the trial to run the way it should be run, and let us allow the judiciary to do their job. The judiciary also should not be intimidated. Look at the law, x-ray it, and take your position firmly. At the end of the day, even if the court of first instance gives their judgment and each parties differ, you can go to appeal. You can go to appeal and recontest for the judgment to be reviewed. So on that note, I would advise the FCC to keep their eyes on the ball and keep pursuing the course of justice on this matter. The fact that they have been arraigned does not mean that he would be eventually convicted. It could be on the other side. But either ways, the both parties can go to appeal and then continue to pursue the case.
All right, now my next question is for Emmanuel. We know this is also quite a sensitive case, so would actually, love to know if there were any ethical considerations or even challenges that reporters faced, while covering this case, or you faced.
Yes, one of the challenges is the fact that, on assumption of office, the new CJN, Justice Kogi State, has actually instructed lawyers, counsels not to speak while a case is ongoing. So that has been a very, very difficult situation. And then, of course, when these cases are ongoing, journalists, sometimes find it very difficult to access the court because of the crowd. The supporters of Yahaya Bello were already in court as early as possible than even some of the journalists. So they blocked every entrance. So a lot of us had difficulties in accessing the court environment. So we're not left on. We don't have any choice than just to report the case the way it is seen in public. But what really happened in court, we didn't get most of the substance. So these are the challenges we're facing. The lawyers cannot talk, the counsels cannot talk. Of course, counsels are only allowed to talk after judgment or after ruling. So those are the challenges that we're facing, and that it makes it very difficult for us to be able to report the case as it is. And then people who are looking for justice, the people of the people of Kogi State, whom this case is being executed in their interest, are not given the details that they need. So those are the challenges that we face. Counsels no longer speak, and it's something that maybe the judicial community must address. Yeah.
Now, this question is for both gentlemen here, Uthman and also Emmanuel. While a governor is in position, I'm sure that the law protects him, but there's been plenty of questions or arguments regarding the influence that the current governor of Kogi State actually had in this case here, especially noting that one time when the EFCC tried to apprehend Yahaya Bello, and it was told that he was present to actually whisk him, in quote, away. So let me first ask Uthman, regarding this, any implications for the current governor, maybe even after he has left office or not?
Like I said earlier, once you have been accused of a crime, especially financial crime, I believe that the prosecutor, EFCC in this case, would have gone to get what is it called? Arrest warrant. Now, if you have an arrest warrant, and this is something that Nigerians need to know. For instance, the very day they went to Wuse Zone 4 to arrest the ex-governor, and there was allegation that the present governor, Usman Ododo, was there and refused and insisted that they should not arrest him. And we could not cite the presence of the governor. This is what they told us. But what we could see, or what we saw on the camera that day, was the presence of the anti-graft agencies, and then, people were crowded in order, trying to arrest the ex-governor. But that failed on that day. The point I'm trying to make is that so long as you have an arrest warrant, it gives you the authority to even break into the house, wherever, if you are very sure that the suspect is present in that place, regardless of anybody's presence, because this time you are not looking for the governor, you are looking for the ex-governor. And like I said, Section 308 was no longer applicable. So when you have an arrest warrant to pick a suspect, that arrest warrant you have gives you the authority to even break into the premises and pick up the suspect. What happened after then? Yahaya Bello resisted arrest in that place. Then the next day, what happened? Up to over 2 to 3 weeks, what did you do? He cannot be always sleeping with the governor in the government lodge. Wherever he is in Nigeria, there is accessibility as far as our security architecture is concerned. So that's why I'm throwing those blames back to the prosecutor, that actually perhaps they were playing politics, they want to pick him, and then all the chairman could do was to come online and begin to tell the whole world that this is what happened. We don't want to hear that explanation. A suspect had been accused of a crime. You have invited him and he refused your invitation. You go after him and pick him up. You have all the machineries, all the tools are there available for you to do your job. You can't blame the former governor, neither can we blame the current governor for preventing them from arresting him.
Well, Uthman, that's a very, I don't know if you agree with me, Dashi, that's a very well thought out response there.
Yes,
but I could also hear Emmanuel holding back his breath while you were talking. I'm wondering if Emmanuel has a submission here regarding this.
Yes, you cannot blame. Yes, you are right to say you cannot blame either the former governor or the present governor. But the governor has a responsibility of presenting himself, of being accountable. He was voted into power twice. He has a responsibility of showing up. So we still have to blame the governor and of course the current governor and the ex-governor. So these are people that go out that can vote us. We're going to want us to do. So I think generally to round up my submission, every leader has a responsibility of submitting themselves irrespective of the system.
You see, one of the most, sorry to cut in, one of the most difficult things to do is to allege that someone has committed a crime and then you willingly invite him to come. Ordinarily, as a gentleman, as a former governor, as a statesman in his own right, he ought to have honored that invitation willingly. And this thing would have, all the drama would have just been phased out. But because of the natural difficulty attached to such kind of invitation, even an ordinary man that you accuse of a crime will be scared of showing face. Perhaps he did not even do it, But the fact that that allegation had been there and everybody's eyes are on you that you committed the crime, you won't want to show up. And that is why the agencies, those security agencies, are there to do their job in case of resistance. You can only arrest somebody who have resisted an invitation or who has resisted an arrest.
Thank you.
He was invited probably.
Uthman, thank you very much for the clarification, but we have run out of time. But now this is real this time. I want to say thank you very much, Emmanuel Bagudu, and also Uthman, for joining us. We appreciate that you've taken out your Saturday morning to give us the details, especially from court and as you see it. Thank you very much once again. Now, we'll be keeping a close eye on this case, but let's also remind or tell that we have a very interesting story about the Port Harcourt Refinery coming back online after very many years of it being, well, told that it would. It's here, finally, I guess, after very, very many decades. Isn't that so, Dashin?
Yes, it is. And we cannot wait for it to start. So let's take a look at this.
The Port Harcourt Refinery Company is a subsidiary of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited, NNPCL. Located in Alessa, Eleme, just to the southeast of Port Harcourt, the company operates 2 oil refineries, including an old plant commissioned in 1965 that can process 60,000 barrels per stream day, as well as a new plant commissioned in 1989, which has a capacity of 150,000 barrels per stream day. Both oil refineries possess a combined capacity of 210,000 barrels per stream day. Sadly, the refinery in Port Harcourt, along with other state-owned refineries in the country, has only utilized a fraction of its capacity in recent decades due to inefficient processes and lack of maintenance. This has led to Nigeria, Africa's largest crude oil producer, becoming increasingly reliant on imports of refined petroleum products. In March 2021, the Nigerian government approved expenditure of $1.5 billion for the refurbishment and modernization of the refinery complex in Port Harcourt. The main contract for the modernization for the refinery was also awarded in the same month. The renovation project for the refinery in Port Harcourt, which will be carried out in 3 phases, is scheduled for completion by 2025. After several postponements, the Port Harcourt refinery has finally commenced fuel production.
It's very important to know that you can't do this without leadership support and encouragement. And with that combination, this plan has come live today. It's going to solve some of the energy security issues in our country, and we are very proud that this has been done, and it's really a very fulfilling moment, this moment for everyone working in NNPC, and also to our shareholders, that we have delivered value to our shareholders, and this is what they expect from us.
In an update on X, the NNPCL said NNPC Limited delivers Port Harcourt Refinery as plant begins truck out of products Tuesday, 26 November 2024 at 1:45 p.m.
Last week, you can see the price coming down. Partly is because there is ample availability of products because marketers, because of removal of subsidy by Mr. President, which has been done well last year, but again, the adjustment to reflect the actual price have made other marketers import, so there's more choice, more availability.
The refinery will start with 60,000 barrels capacity per day, releasing premium motor spirit, diesel, and others into the Nigerian market.
For today, on the port of NNPC, the price still remains 1,045 naira. But the challenge we are having, and the GMD has promised to do something about it as it concerns the selling rate of Dangote. Dangote is selling 970 naira per liter, while NNPC is still selling to us 1,045 naira. A difference of variation of 75 naira per liter. And you know, a businessman appreciates 1 kobo as a discount, so there's no business. So hence, the troop in and the rush and the high traffic that we should be occasion arising from today is a bit less, but I think going forward, NNPC will review its price going forward.
The Port Harcourt refinery would be the second petrol-producing refinery after the Dangote refinery commenced PMS production in September. Before now, promises made to Nigerians by the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources and the NNPCL about the refinery failed 7 times. The hope is that with this refinery now up and running alongside the Dangote refinery, issues concerning fuel scarcity and price hikes could soon become a thing of the past, not forgetting the other 2 state-owned refineries in Warri and Kaduna. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. Well, let's begin by telling you that former Nigeria's coordinating minister for the economy and minister of finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has been reappointed as the Director General of the World Trade Organization. This is her second term in office. Her present stint will end on 31st of August 2025, and she was first elected as the WTO Director General on February 15, 2021. Now, Okonjo-Iweala, the first woman and the first African to head the WTO, was the only candidate in the race and had been all but assured a second term. The 70-year-old Nigerian's reappointment was approved by consensus during a special meeting of the organization's General Council held behind closed doors.
Let me say that until we get specifics in terms of what is planned, I think it will be a bit premature to try to pronounce on these issues. We are looking forward to working with the new administration. I think we should come into things with a very constructive and creative approach to trying to deal with the issues that we face the world trading system. Of course, we would like to make sure that we don't have a situation in which we have any kind of trade disputes that are detrimental to the functioning of the world trade system. So that I think we can say, but beyond that, I think we should wait and for actual policies. So yes, there may be increasing disputes, but yes, we have the forum to handle them, and I think the U.S. is using this as well as any other member. So that's the way that I think, I hope things will continue in that direction.
In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu has congratulated Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, former Nigeria's coordinating minister for the economy and minister of finance, on her unanimous re-election as the Director General of the World Trade Organization. Now, the renowned development economist and global finance experts made history in 2021 as the first African and first woman to lead the 164 nation-member WTO. The Nigerian leader noted with delight that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala's unanimous appointment for a second four-year term demonstrated the trust and confidence that the international community placed in her leadership to advance multilateral trade for sustainable global development. Now, away from that, the Nigerian Army has released investigative journalist Fisayo Soyombo. One of Soyombo's lawyers, Abimbola Ojenike, confirmed to newsmen in a telephone interview that he was released shortly after 7 p.m. on Friday. Ojenike clarified that they are attempting to find a way out of the cantonment after Soyombo was just released a few minutes ago. Now, the Foundation for Investigative Journalism disclosed on X, formerly Twitter, that Soyombo had been in Army custody for the past 3 days. Now, earlier, the acting Deputy Director of 6th Division Army Public Relations, Lieutenant Colonel Njuma, had confirmed Soyombo's arrest. In a statement on Friday, Njuma said Soyombo was apprehended at an illegal oil bunkering site. The Nigerian Army Headquarters Department of Army Operations has underscored the need for its officers to consistently avail themselves for training opportunities for contingency planning. Now, this was made known by the Army Chief of Operations, Major General Benson Sinjen, at the 3 Armored Division in Jos, Plateau State, during a one-day sensitization lecture on drafting campaign and contingency planning. Now, our correspondent Chizoba Anyongwe was there for News Central and now reports.
With the rate of insurgencies in some parts of the country, coupled with the devastating toll it takes on members of the public, one may not be wrong to call for more training such as this in order to further equip officers and men of the military in combat readiness through such non-kinetic measures. Organized by the Nigerian Army Headquarters for officers of 3 Armored Division and Operation Safe Haven, the Chief of Operations Army, represented at this event, says this exercise aims at ensuring combat readiness for Army officers.
We normally develop them for exigencies, in case of the unforeseen. So it tells you, your units and formation what to do when the unforeseen happen, and it prepares their mind towards any eventuality. And also we could have a contingency plan for disaster, for even for election. We normally have contingency plan, and also security of the barracks and the area of your responsibility.
The host, the General Officer Commanding 3 Armored Division and Commander Operation Safe Haven, Major General Abdusalam Abubakar, says the essence of the seminar cannot be overemphasized.
Our security environment is fraught with complexities arising from asymmetric threats like terrorism, insurgency, kidnapping, banditry, amongst other multi-dimensional threats. Therefore, the significance of today's lecture cannot be overstated, because the concepts of contingency and campaign planning are quite pivotal to achieving success on the battlefield and in maintaining national security.
Now, with this seminar that has come to a close, one would expect that the deliveries of the Nigerian Army will be improved upon in its operation combating insurgency, not just in Plateau State, but in Nigeria as a whole. From the 3 Division Maxwell Kobe Cantonment for News Central, Chizoba Anyongwe.
Now, Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court Abuja has discharged and acquitted no fewer than 50 persons alleged to be members of the proscribed Indigenous People of Biafra IPOB of allegations bordering on terrorism. Now delivering judgment, Omotosho held that the Nigerian police force failed in its entirety to establish a case against the 50 defendants, including 4 women. Justice Omotosho, who upheld the no-case submission of the defendants, said that the prosecution failed to adduce any credible evidence linking the defendants with the allegations they were charged. The judge consequently struck out the 3-count charge preferred against the defendants. Now, the Inspector General of Police had sued the 50 defendants. Away from Nigeria, Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye says France should close its military bases in West African state as it prepared to mark the 80th anniversary of a notorious colonial slaughter. Now, while speaking to newsmen at the presidential palace on Thursday, Diomaye said Senegal is an independent country, a sovereign country, and sovereignty does not accept the presence of military bases in a sovereign country. Now, Faye said that France President Emmanuel Macron had admitted that his country's troops were responsible for a massacre of Senegalese soldiers in 1944. He hailed the acknowledgement but said that allowing French bases in the country was incompatible with national sovereignty.
Hi, welcome back. Second hour here for Breakfast Extra. We've got our big story for this morning. Nigeria's Apex Bank is taking no prisoners in its battle against inflation. In a bold move, the Central Bank of Nigeria has raised the monetary policy rate by an additional 100 basis points, bringing it to a record 27.5%. The decision announced after the Monetary Policy Committee meeting underscores the CBN's aggressive tightening stance as it seeks to curb inflation, which remains at 22.8%. According to CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso, this measure is necessary to stabilize the naira, attract foreign investment, and tame Nigeria's surging price levels. However, critics warn that this persistent tightening could have unintended consequences. Economic experts are raising alarms about the potential for economic contractions, particularly as businesses and individuals struggle under the weight of higher borrowing costs. With interest rates now at a historic high, the cost of credit has effectively doubled over the last 2 years, pushing small businesses and households into even deeper financial strain. So the big question remains, is this the right call to fix inflation, or does it risk choking an already fragile economy?
Now, to help us unpack this and the implications of this move, we're joined by Frank Fagbo, economic analyst from Business Edge and also Nairametrics. And we also have joining us Dumebi Oluwole, a senior economist at Sears. Now, together, we'll explore the logic behind this hike and its ripple effects across Nigeria's economic landscape. Thank you so much, gentleman and lady, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Okay.
I don't know who to ask first. I'll let you make that decision.
Start with Frank.
So, Frank, first off, let's put this in concept, exactly what this means for the average man. Let's make it a very, very simple, exact description of the situation right now. I don't know if you can do that for us, Frank.
Okay, so if you look at the interest rate, it has increased. I don't want to use the word basis point because it looks like I'm going to be talking over the heads of people. But right now, 27.25%. And what that means is if an importer, let's say we go to Idumota or you go to Alaba, an importer who is interested in bringing in goods into the country, let's say spare parts, and you walk into the bank, oh, I need some loan to go facilitate this trade. You know what? The banks are going to give you that loan, not even at 27.5%. They're going to give you higher than the benchmark because they always add like 10 basis points to the benchmark and you get it around, let's say 33%, 35%. And imagine what that is going to do to your bottom line. Remember that you've not even talked about profits. We're also going to be talking about the purchasing power of people have reduced over the months in the last 3 quarters. So your sales have dropped drastically on the average, whether you're selling luxury goods, essential goods, because people are literally cutting down on what it is they're purchasing. So I always say the economy is cyclical. So you've gotten to the bank to get loan. When you get loan at 30% or 35%, you're now going to trade and you put it in your operations for your business. When you put it in your operations, the price of that good will go high, will go up because of the loan. It's definitely who's going to pay back for it. It's the customers that are going to pay for it. And so when the price increases, it brings about further inflation in some way because the prices increase. The customers are coming to your shop to buy spare parts, and you're telling them, okay, it's now very, very, very. The spare part is expensive because of the loan you got, and you're paying back at a premium. So you've not even talked about breaking even, let alone making profit. So you're not making enough profit for you to be able to have so much money to pay back that loan. And that's why we're seeing what is happening with the NPL, non-performing loans in banks. And people who no longer have the capacity to be able to pay back the loans they've accrued over the years because of how expensive it is. And it's definitely going to bring about low economic growth. We're not going to experience economic growth. But I can't really blame the CBN at this point in time because the CBN governor said categorically that his job is the toughest job in the world. And I think I wouldn't differ. I won't even beg to differ in any way because you're caught between the devil and the WC, talking about what do you do? You're thinking of economic growth. You're also thinking about inflation, which is a common devil. So his major objective right now is to bring down inflation. But where we're not seeing the work is from the fiscal policy point of view. The Minister of Finance, we're not seeing a lot coming in.
We're going to dive into that in detail much later. But Dashin, you had a question.
Yes, I want to put that question through to Dumebi. Now, looking at the economic climate, we know how difficult it is for everybody, even the elites. Is this the right approach?
The answer is yes. It might not really look like it because of how painful it is, considering the cumulative effect of every other thing that Nigerians are feeling, right? Yeah. So apart from the increase in interest rates, we're also seeing an increase in petrol prices. We're seeing an increase in food prices. We're seeing an increase in transport costs. And not only that, there are still queues at the filling stations sometimes. You know, you go to the market, there's shortages of goods that you even probably need, right? And you're just generally stressed. There's a lot of stress. You're going to work, you have to think about work, and you look at a normal household, a woman that is probably going to the market, you have to carry your 5 children, because on average, the households in Nigeria, about family of 4, right? So you have kids that you're taking care of, and the man as well is thinking of, he's going to go to work, he has to provide for the family, and then he goes to try to pay for something, the ATM is not working. So generally, when you combine all of that, both the mental, emotional, and physical stress that people are going through, and when they now hear there's an increase in interest rate again, so when you think of the fact that your income is really not serving you right now, and you want to try to take a loan from the bank to make up for that, and you go to the bank to try to get that loan, you realize that the interest rate is higher. You know, there's all of that, we call it, there's all of that economic and emotional duress that people are under. Right, but when we look at it from a policy standpoint, that's where the conversation is a little bit different, right? Because what the CBN is doing is it's pulling the levers that it has at its disposal to try to bring down prices. I remember Nigeria is currently in a different climate from where it was some 10 years ago, right? We are facing a cumulative of shocks where things that we should have done some 10 years ago, we're doing them now, right? When you look at the subsidy removal, you're looking at the capital control measures on the FX market. You're looking at liberalizing the FX market. You're looking at opening the borders, right? So some of the things that we should have been doing on a staggered basis to ensure that the painful effect on consumers are not this much, we're now having to do them right now. And the time really is now to do it.
Well, you just said something that the CBN is trying to pull, you know, the levers
at its disposal, yes.
Yes, to bring down prices. Can you explain
what that means? Okay, so as a body, right, the CBN has a few instruments at its disposal that it can use to stabilize prices, because the true mandate of every central bank in the world is to ensure price stability, right? And price stability in 2 senses. The first one is inflation, that is commodity prices. And the second sense is the exchange rate, right? Because exchange rate in itself is a price that we see in the exchange rate market, in the forex market, people trade currencies. And what the CBN does is that it manages both markets to see, okay, what is happening here and how can we ensure that prices do not go above our target? Because inflation in itself is the rate of increase at which prices are increasing. Not because we do not expect prices to increase, but we do not expect them to increase too rapidly so that the economy is not in a state of shock. And it's the exact same mindset the CBN has when you look at the exchange rate market. While we expect some level of volatility, we don't expect it to be too drastic at a certain point in time that it causes shocks to businesses and all of that. So at its disposal, the CBN has some instruments that it can ensure, it can put to use to ensure that that level of stability is ensured.
This is one of those instruments?
Yes.
So what other instruments are available?
So there's such a thing called moral suasion. There are other things like monitoring the banking sector liquidity, you know, issuing automobiles, right, things like that. To open market operations, right? So what the CBN does is that on a wider scale, there's also something called forward guidance, right? And that's where the CBN comes out, tell everybody, we're doing this, so we're going to increase interest rates, so communicating with the market, right? So so those are some of the levers that the CBN has at disposal.
All these are under the purview of the CBN.
The central bank, yes.
So it's their discretion to choose which of these instruments to use. Why do we choose this? No, this is to you, Frank. Why do we choose? Why does the CBN choose this instrument at this point in time? Is it out of panic, or is it out of what exactly is it? Because we've already crossed that point where, I mean, inflation is what, 22.8?
No, 33. 33.88.
So we are, we're underwater.
Food inflation 39 point.
Yes.
Point.
The headline inflation is 33.
So is this panic or what could it be?
So if you look at what has been happening in the last 3 quarters, you see that they've been consistently increasing the interest rate just to bring down inflation. And that is like you have a common devil. It's just like your house is on fire. You're not going to be thinking of carrying your clothes. The first thing you're going to be thinking of is how to leave the building, how to just save yourself, save yourself. And I think that's what the CBN is looking at doing right now. That's why you see they're looking at, that's the lowest hanging fruit that they can hold on to just fight this inflation. And in the words of one of the members of the MPC, she said categorically that if inflation doesn't come down, they're going to see further increase the interest rates. And inflation always lags a little bit. Sometimes it takes like 180 days window for you to reflect, for you to start seeing the impact of the rate hike. And we've not seen that. We've not seen the impact at a point in time. I think the last two inflation figures were increased, went up a little bit. But the third to the last one was a bit reduced, and that was before we experienced the fuel price hike. And when you see that, okay, fuel, which is a common commodity in this country, it's a leveler when we talk about the Nigerian economy. We are a oil-driven economy, and if the price of fuel increases, you sure know that everything is going to increase. But I want to tone it down on CBN and their policy. I want to really focus on fiscal policy. What are they doing in addressing this? Yes, we're seeing the CBN governor tightening their seatbelt, trying to make sure it's like they're in an emergency mode. You're seeing him walking, kudos to him.
Panic.
Is it,
Sorry,
that's the question.
Sorry, I'm just kind of coming here.
Yes,
so it's not panic, right?
Yeah.
It's economic principles. When prices are rising very quickly, the fastest tool at the disposal of the CBN is the interest rate. And this goes back to economic theory. And the ideology behind it is this: when prices are rising very quickly, right, and you increase interest rate, the expectation is that, because inflation by definition is when there's too much money chasing too few goods. So what it means is that the goods available are scarce, and then there's a lot of demand pushing that. So using that ideology, when you look at the cash in circulation coming from 2023 up until today, you see that it has increased it has almost tripled, right? So with using that data that the CBN has at its disposal, and then you look at banking sector liquidity, what that tells the CBN is that there's a lot of liquidity in the system that is, to an extent, at least nudging this increase in inflation. In an instance, what they would have to do is somewhat isolate the fiscal side of things that are driving inflation. So that on their end, there's logic as to why they're increasing interest rates. Now, what this means is that there's banking sector liquidity, which is increasing. There's cash in circulation that is high. So from their own sense, that definition of inflation is existing. And one way to help solve and bring down the rate of increase in prices is to increase the interest rate. And the reason is because when you increase the anchor rate, which is the MPR, there's a transmission mechanism into other interest rates in the economy, like your savings rates, bonds rates, and things like that. And if those other interest rates increases, what it means is that it incentivizes people to now put their money in the bank, right? So where you have, like, your savings rate is higher, and you're now encouraged to put more money into the bank so you can get more interest on it. So if that happens, right? If that happens, money supply is supposed to reduce. And if money supply reduces, we see that rate of increase in inflation where too much money is chasing too few goods, it lowers, right? So from the CBN standpoint, that is the logic behind increasing interest rates to reduce money supply and then reduce that rate of increase in inflation. That is just isolating the fiscal side of things first, because those are the things, if as a central bank, you do not have to, not because you're not going to look at the other structural issues that are causing inflation, but because from your standpoint, because if there was no need to increase interest rates, the CBN will not have to do that. And now let's put this in context of what's happening globally. When we look at what happened from 2020 up until 2022, the global economy received so much shock from the COVID-19 pandemic into the Russia-Ukraine war. We saw global commodity prices rise. And what the global central banks do? They increased interest rates. And that's because of that logic behind it. The only issue was that in Nigeria, the transmission mechanism is relatively slower. And it's not a Nigeria unique problem. It happens with developing and frontier markets, where the transmission mechanism between when you increase that anchor rate and how fast it goes to other interest rates in the economy to start encouraging people like you to put in money into the bank, right? So that transmission mechanism is very slow. Unlike in the US, unlike in the US where if the US Fed increases, its Fed's fund rate, you will see mortgage rate increase almost instantly, and savings rates as well.
I actually have two questions. One for
please.
you is, how many more, increases are we likely to see? And for you, Frank, earlier you talked about, the impact. Would like to know which sectors of the economy, are likely to be affected by this particular increase rate.
Okay, if you look at different sectors of the economy, if you look at the inflation curve, you see one of the major drivers is food inflation. Anything that happens to food affects core inflation, it affects headline inflation and all whatnot. So food inflation is something is an aspect that I know that is going to be very much affected. And I would love to also buttress on what she said regarding the reason why you're seeing the CBN governor increasing the interest rate. You see that on one hand, using one stone to kill so many birds, two birds. One is to bring down inflation, another is to also bring in for us to have influx of forex. And because our money market instruments are going to be attractive and appealing to a lot of investors, and you're going to see investors from developed
so it's
markets.
an investors market.
Yes, exactly. Are going to come in.
And it's that price stability thing too.
Exactly.
On the exchange rate side.
Look at what our T-bills are telling us. Look at the government bonds. And that's why you're seeing it oversubscribed at every point in time in the last 2 quarters. Investors from developed markets are coming into
it's very interesting
markets.
Now, first of all, you just noted that it should have happened earlier.
Yes.
We should have gone through this earlier. It's just unfortunate that it happened at the same time we had the whole forex thing, the whole fuels, petrol pricing and everything. So that's why we're in this mess. Yeah. So to your question, which you asked earlier.
Yes, I actually asked that because, I remember reading, during the whole Ukraine war and all that there was an increase, and we're seeing another one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say to that is, it should happen as necessary, right? But it will happen at different degrees. I mean, at the beginning of the CBN's tightening cycle, we saw like almost a jumbo rate hike, right? Almost 200 basis points. And then we saw another one, 100 basis points. And then now we're seeing a 25 basis points increase. So what that tells you is that the pace of tightening is reducing, right? The pace of increase in the interest rate is reducing. And that is because when you also look at the rate of increase in inflation, the rate of increase in inflation is also kind of reducing. Not because inflation itself is not high, but the rate at which is now rising is also slowing. And that when you look at the difference between when we're in January and what the increase in inflation was in March, was almost a 3 percentage points increase.
So it's a gradual slowing down until the plateaus and then starts to reverse.
Exactly,
so
exactly. But that doesn't mean they're going to stop tightening. So the reason why I say that is because inflation in itself will drive the CBN's decision, right? If inflation numbers today come in higher, right, for November, the CBN will have to tighten again, right? But they just might not tighten about up to 100 basis points.
So that goes to Dashin's question.
Yes.
How many more tightening?
As much, if inflation keeps if inflation keeps rising, we will still see the CBN
so now to fact though. So to the common man now, me. I'm not a marketer. I don't sell spare parts.
How common are you?
Come on, no. Come on. How does that affect me? I mean, I'm used to borrowing from the bank, especially I'm not going to tell you why.
Microfinance.
But what does that mean for me now? Will I still be able to borrow? That's a lot. I remember when it was somewhere around 18 or so from many years ago, very many years ago. Wow, time flies. Will I still be able to borrow at this point and repay at 27 point what? Oh, no, you did say that they'll also have to add all these basis points.
Lending rate about 33%.
You know what? Sorry, I asked that question. I'm not borrowing again. I'm not paying you back 33% over.
I was even going to say that if you're talking about a common man, you seldom see a common man who goes to the bank to get access, to get a loan. So if you juxtapose increase in interest rate to fight inflation and economic growth, you put it in the hands of common man, he's going to tell you, please beat inflation, because he's more interested in making sure when he goes to the market, the prices of things are cheap, or they're not they're affordable for him to be able to afford it. Like the prices are a little bit lower. Right now, you're seeing it in astronomical numbers, exponential increase as regards the price of the price of inflation, and it's affecting everybody. So the common man would always edge towards what? Bringing down inflation. And that's why you're seeing them saying that, oh, the prices of things are becoming expensive. One of the laudable initiatives that I even saw, but I felt that it was channeled towards a wrong, there's a wrong approach to read, is one, I heard that there's free CNG bus ride in Abuja, but I was like, why giving the masses free CNG bus rides? Why not taking it to the farms? Why not making sure, okay, the farmers can get access to these CNG buses that they can use to transport this food from the farm gates to the markets? That entire logistic, that value chain would have a massive impact on the price of food. I don't know if you get my point. So farmers are looking for incentives right now to make sure the prices of food come down. And one of the fundamental reasons why we're seeing inflation increasing, especially food, and particularly about food, because we have the numbers, more than 80% of food of Nigerians spend most of their monies, income on food. So it would affect it if the price of transporting those food items from the farm to the market is brought down. And that's what I feel that from the fiscal point of view, we should be doing.
Now, listen, from the two of you, you've actually totally described this situation. I bet the viewers also have a better grasp on the way.
I actually do.
And somewhere in my tea leaf, I can see the Minister of Economy somewhere in there for you, Frank. Thank you very much. Please remember us. But we'll have to end this segment here right now, because we've got another very interesting one, inside of which we'll be keeping Dumebi, because we want to talk about the very exciting moment when the president is like, oh, wow, the numbers from the NBS are great for the third quarter. So we're talking about that next. Thank you very much, Frank. You'll be leaving us with the delectable Dumebi for now, but thank you nonetheless.
Thank you.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We're still talking business, by the way. Now, the third quarter numbers are in, and it's a mixed bag of cautious optimism and enduring challenges for Nigeria's economy. Now, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, reported a GDP growth of 3.4% in third quarter 2024, reflecting a modest yet significant improvement from the previous quarter's 2.7%. Now, according to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, this uptick represents progress and reaffirms his administration's commitment to enhancing the living standards of Nigerians. Tinubu credited the increase to renewed investment in critical sectors like agriculture and oil production, as well as government policies designed to stabilize the economy. However, while GDP is climbing, inflation remains a concern, albeit with a slight decline from 23.4% to 22.8%. Now, many Nigerians are questioning whether this economic growth is translating to improved conditions for the average citizen. Very, very important question there. With persistent unemployment, rising cost of living, and global economic uncertainty, how realistic is the government's optimism? And the broader question remains, is this growth sustainable or just another fleeting blip?
Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Tunji Andrews, an experienced economic analyst who's been here before. And from our previous session, we kept Dumebi Oluwale, senior economist at Stairs. Both of whom will be bringing us, well, understanding to these matters here. Mr. Tunji, you're welcome. Good to see you here again. I'm going to ask you first, if you permit me, Dumebi. I know it's ladies first, but you were here from before. But let's talk about these numbers, 3.4%. What's driving it exactly now, Tunji?
So basically the usuals, telecoms, oil and gas. I mean, so the usuals continue to drive the numbers. I think there is some factors for, I don't want to use the word excitement. There is some promise. I think that's the word, promise. But to be honest, I think the president should be looking at it from the perspective of 3% as against what? Should we be doing more? I think yes. China, for instance, has been on a 30-year run of 8% plus GDP growth year on year. And that is the kind of growth we need to see in Nigeria, especially for the fact that over the last quarter, 18 months or so, we've seen the Naira consistently devalue. And you also understand that in GDP calculations, you pause FX rate. So this is not taking into cognizance that the economy has seen a devaluation. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to say here, but I mean, for the rhetoric, yeah, let's be excited.
The president is very excited. He's going Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
No, Cocoa for MBS numbers.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering exactly what is so exciting about the numbers. If we compare it to previous numbers from perhaps maybe previous quarters, how exponential, how exciting are these numbers?
So I would say the excitement is just excitement. 3.46% as against 3.19%, as against 2.5% in Q3 2023. It's, I would say, it's just higher. But as economists, we always look at numbers and how they trickle down to the masses in terms of like better food prices, better jobs. Because when you look at GDP numbers, you don't only look at the numbers in absolute terms, you look at the sectors that are actually growing and how job elastic those sectors are. And for this particular GDP, Q3 2024 GDP numbers, we did see that almost 60% of the growth that we saw was actually from telecoms and financial services. And when you look at financial services, you see that they did make a lot of this growth because of high interest rates. And how beneficial are high interest, we had the conversation earlier, how beneficial are high interest rates to the common man, right? And then you look at telecoms, how job elastic is telecoms? What are the linkage effects, right, in terms of creating more jobs? Because the expectation is that as the economy grows, people should be able to have more jobs, they should be able to make more money, and then we should see higher consumption levels that should then now contribute a lot more to GDP, right? But we're not really seeing that. And what that tells us is that the other 40% that is slowing are where those linkage effects should be coming from. Agriculture, the mining sector, manufacturing, food, and we're not seeing that happen, right? So while the president might smile or is excited about the nominal numbers, I should say that we still have a lot more work to do, and it's okay to be in the bubble, but let the bubble burst as quickly as possible.
Let's hear from
Wow.
Tunji. Yeah, how does this translate to the common man? You know, especially considering that the Yuletide is here. And our producer was just telling us how, earlier in the week, he actually bought a bag of rice for 88,000 naira.
That's cheap.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I remember he's a guy, so I don't think he's
that's
business
why.
market.
Are you serious? 88,000
He should
naira
ask
is
his
cheap.
wife. He must get the numbers
Of
wrong.
course not. I think predominantly, it used to be part of my bid to check GDP. And if anything, it's so very removed from the context of the average Nigerian, which is why the MBS used to be very, I don't know if they're still the same way, it used to be very heavy on CPI conversations, because that is the major conversation around the average Nigerian. GDP is a factor of the promise of productivity.
Yeah.
So for instance, we could have a civil war in Nigeria, for instance, and spend billions to rehabilitate the country, and GDP will expand because we have spent money, not necessarily improving lives. So it's really about what was happening, but the trickle-down effects is not really there, and which is what bothers me, really, and why I expected something a little different from the president. If anything, I've always looked at him as someone who has a very visionary stance. At least that's the perception I've always had.
You expected something different in terms of efforts or results?
No. I expected difference in terms of vision.
Oh, vision.
So, I mean, think about it this way. Nigeria is not number one in anything. I'm talking productivity now.
Immigration. Sorry, go on.
Oh, well, we have that. But in terms of productivity, we're not number one in crude oil. We're not number one in cocoa. We're not number one in shea butter. We're not number one in
Sesame
anything.
seed.
You see, so the factors that make you translate productivity is being very good in one thing and then translating that into other things. So for instance, if you were number one in cocoa, for instance, you would create jobs, you would export, that will create FX. At the same time, that will now put factories around it and economic activity around it. So people would supply trucks, people would supply goods. It will boom from that one particular activity. And Nigeria has not been able to narrow down what our vision for growth is.
I'm sorry, Chinji, can I stop you there? I just made a joke, but while I thought about it critically, Dashin, I think it made sense. It was a joke, but now I'm serious about
Export.
it. We are actually great at immigration.
Yeah.
That means we have a lot of manpower, whether we like it or not. Certain countries have actually looked at this and they've sunk their teeth into it. They provide customer care. India, Indonesia, Malaysia.
Absolutely.
So we have all of these people. Let's put them to. Let's use them as an export.
I'm not so against. So I'm not actually. I'm very for immigration. I'm for.
We don't even have to immigrate. We don't even have to immigrate. I'm saying that we can actually, from station here in Nigeria,
export the jobs.
Export the jobs.
Exactly.
Am I correct?
So my point is, there's a vision that needs to come from leadership.
Yeah.
There needs to be a vision, and that for that kind of a thing to work, you need infrastructure. You need, fiber.
The jobs have to be available.
You need fiber. You need to keep them in some place where they will be able to create that kind of productivity. We do not have the vision to create that, is my problem. So when the president comes and talks about 3% plus GDP growth, we've seen 6.9% GDP growth in Nigeria before. It's not new. What is going to get us to 8% is what I was expecting to hear. And if there's any disappointment on my side, is the fact that from the way I look at him as against his predecessors, I just kind of felt he would be more visionary in terms of growth.
Oh, okay. Now, earlier, he did talk about, Nigeria not even being number one when it comes to oil. But, this quarter, the oil industry actually saw recovery, showed recovery. But is this enough, considering the volatility that comes with oil sector?
I think the answer is that it's no. We've spoken about how growth translates into, real economic productivity, right? And we do know that a lot of Nigeria's revenue now, hard currency revenue, comes from crude oil, right? It's benchmarked against crude oil. So when you're seeing like crude oil just take lips, it doesn't really inspire confidence into with an investor miles away that is looking to put money into that sector. And this brings to mind the factors that are hindering Nigeria's exponential growth in oil production. And remember, we are entering into a global environment, or we are in a global environment that is looking to transition away from crude oil. So what exactly, and that also speaks kind of to vision now. So what exactly are we doing to partake in those conversations? We have huge natural gas reserves. What are we doing with that? Nigeria is still in a conversation of almost 40 years ago, we're still talking about gas flaring. Associated gas comes with our crude oil, but we're not seeing that being utilized.
Oh, we are utilizing it now when it comes, because that's your CNG at the end of the day.
I will say that,
no,
I don't know.
You're wagging your head?
No. Again, we're looking at the common money. How many people use CNG? Okay. We're talking about liquefied, we're talking about LPG now, cooking gas. We want to move to a world where people can actually use cooking gas, but even in rural areas. But how accessible is it? We're producing it. We have the natural resources, but we still import it. So again, vision. Number two, I think the simple answer to that question is no, it's not enough. We need to do a lot more, right? Nigeria's oil production potential is almost 2.5 million barrels per day. We're still underperforming that. On average, this year, we've done about 1.3 million barrels per day. We're still far from where we can be. And now we've benchmarked, we've moved our oil production benchmark from the 2024 budget of about 1.6 million barrels per day to about 2.06 million barrels per day. And we're still producing on average 1.3. So what exactly are we doing to make sure that we actually hit even the 1.6 that we're supposed to, we're supposed to hit this year? Right? And what that means is that when you now contextualize all of these numbers in the economic state, if we're not able to produce 2.06, where's the money for the economy going to come from?
We will not.
The answer is that we're not. If we're doing 1.3 now, we won't be able to hit 2.06 if we don't address the issues. And what that now means, again, our conversation has been around the common man. It means that if Nigeria doesn't produce enough crude oil, we're not going to be able to sell enough. It means we're not going to be able to export enough. If we're not exporting enough, it means we're not earning enough forex. If we're not earning enough forex, it means that the exchange rate issues are going to continue. If that continues, imports issues.
We don't have the time to contain most of the questions that we have for you.
Yeah.
But real quick, in under 30 seconds, do let us know, what figure are we looking for before it affects the common man?
For oil production?
I mean, with the
for GDP?
Yes, GDP.
Nigeria's potential is about 5%, at least in a year, annually.
5%?
Yeah.
Tunji, do you agree?
It should be much higher, but...
I would say we need to do 8% at least for 10 years before it starts to affect the common man.
10 years?
10 years.
Wow. Be a father, granddaddy by then, but it's okay. I'll take it. It's all we have. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Tunji Andrews, for coming through, and of course, maybe for staying for 2 sessions.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Do stay tuned. We've got the news at the top of the hour, and then more discussions inside of Breakfast Extra for a Saturday edition.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I'm Darshan Usman. Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, says the Port Harcourt Refining Company has not yet commenced bulk sales or opened its purchase portal as essential processes are still being finalized. Now, NNPCL Chief Corporate Communications Officer Olufemi Shoneye disclosed this in a statement on Friday. He stated that the products the refinery currently sells originates from the Dangote refinery, and it includes applicable fees by the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, that's the NMDPRA. The company also advised the public to disregard any misleading information regarding pricing and notes that official announcements will be made if and when price reviews occur. This clarification comes amid public anticipation of the Port Harcourt refinery's full-scale operations as the company works to streamline its processes. Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court Abuja has discharged and acquitted no fewer than 50 persons alleged to be members of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra of allegations bordering on terrorism. Now, delivering judgment, Omotosho held that the Nigerian police force failed in its entirety to establish a case against the 50 defendants, including 4 women. Now, Justice Omotosho, who upheld the no-case submission of the defendants, said that the prosecution failed to adduce any credible evidence linking the defendants with the allegations they were charged. The judge consequently struck out the 3-count charge preferred against the defendants. The Inspector General of Police had sued the 50 defendants. Now, away from Nigeria, Gabon's Constitutional Court has validated the referendum results with 91.64% of voters approving the new constitution. Now, this clears the way for a presidential election in August 2025 as promised by the military rulers. The new constitution establishes a 7-year presidential term, a strong executive power, and a ban on dynastic transmissions of power, and the court's validation marks a significant step towards a return to civilian rule, ending 55 years of the Bongo family's rule. The military rulers have vowed to hand power back to civilians, with Transitional President General Brice Oligui Nguema expressing interest in running for president. The validation process was observed by local associations and the United Nations, with no major incidents reported.
La Cour proclame le référendum du 16 novembre 2024 sur le projet de loi portant constitution de la République gabonaise a donné les résultats globaux suivants. Inscrits 853 028. Votants 462 166. Suffrages exprimés 416 000.
And you're welcome. It's our extra special big story here. Every year, from November 25th, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, to, if I'm not mistaken, December 10th, which is the Human Rights Day, the world unites for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This global campaign, initiated in 1991 by the Center for Women's Global Leadership, continues to spotlight the urgent need to eliminate all forms of violence against women and also girls. The campaign reminds us that gender-based violence is not only a violation of human rights, but also a devastating barrier to gender equality and sustainable development. Now, this year's theme, Time to Act Now, emphasizes the urgency of moving beyond dialogue to taking concrete transformative action that hold perpetrators accountable and ensure the safety and also dignity of survivors. Women across the globe continue to face alarming rates of violence, with data from the World Health Organization revealing that 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Yet the campaign offers hope by galvanizing governments, civil society organizations, and also individuals to challenge harmful gender norms and empower women everywhere.
Now, at the heart of this moment or this movement is the belief that ending violence against women is not just a woman's issue, it's a societal imperative. Now, from grassroots mobilizations to international declarations, the 16 days of activism serves as a rallying cry for solidarity, accountability, and systemic change. Women must be seen not as victims, but as active agents of change, especially in reclaiming their lives and also when it comes to transforming their communities.
So joining us to delve deeper into the crucial movement is, of course, none other than Juliet Rufai. She is a sexual assault referral center management expert. Juliet, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Grand. First off, let's start with a simple question, get that out the way. Exactly why are these days of activism very, very crucial, especially for women?
Yes, they are very crucial, both for women and for men, because we don't just want to act in silos. We want to get men involved. And it's important for us to recognize the magnitude of violence perpetrated against women, draw attention to that, and then raise voices to stop it. So that's why it's important. And also to support survivors of gender and sexual-based violence.
Okay.
All right, but then what kind of barriers or challenges do women actually face, especially when it comes to seeking justice, after violence has been perpetrated on them?
The barriers are many, and they are diverse also. And justice to one could be justice to another person. What I mean is that different people perceive justice in different ways. So what is justice to you might be different from what is justice to another person. However, in accessing this justice, women encounter a lot of barriers. One is disbelieving a survivor of sexual and gender-based violence can be a barrier. So if I come and tell you my story that I have experienced violence and you don't believe me, I may not want to continue to seek for justice, maybe to get the offender behind bars, because you don't believe me in the first place. Stigmatization is another barrier. When people talk about their stories and what they have gone through, some people judge them, they shame them, they turn away from the offender, from the perpetrator, and then they turn against the survivor who is bold enough to break her story. So if you stigmatize me, you judge me because of what I put on, and you're asking me why I went to his place in the first place, why I was out late at night and all that, you're already judging me, okay? So I may not want to take it further. If you shame me instead of shaming the offender or the suspect, then I might not take it further. So another thing is also when you have weak institutions in terms of the legal frameworks that exist, okay, if you don't have strong legal frameworks that support survivors, or you have these legal frameworks but they are not implemented, that is also a problem. The society is a problem. You and I, okay, we are members of society. How do we see women who come out to say that they have been, for instance, sexually abused?
Stigma attached to it.
Exactly, stigma and all that. And then in terms of who bears the burden of cost for justice is also a barrier. If I suffer, I experience a crime, and I'm made to also pay in order to access justice, maybe going to report, and you tell me that I have to provide vehicle for you to carry the offender to court and all that. I may not want to continue. I may not even have the money, to facilitate the access to justice. So I may decide to just hand over everything to God or stay back. And then family pressure. Pressure from the society also, even threats from the perpetrator, the person who has done this to me and feels that, well, if you continue, I'm going to do this and that to you. We have some cases where some landlords threaten to eject survivors because they take the steps to access justice. So they are numerous. And then even the financial aspect of it too. You can imagine a woman who is suffering domestic violence, heavily suffering domestic violence in the hands of the husband, and she's financially dependent on the husband. And then the thought of, do I leave? What will happen to my children? What will happen to me? Where do I continue? So these are some of the barriers that, you know.
In all of this, I'm asking myself, in my head, the question, how much of a challenge does culture present when it comes to crimes against women or violence against women?
Yeah, a whole lot of challenges. We still live in a society that is perceived as patriarchal. You know, is the men's word. And culture will tell you, well, you have to submit. Even our religion will tell you, well, you have to submit. So even if you're dying there, just remain there and submit. Nobody wants to listen to you and understand why it is happening and how to help you out. And then in some culture, once you get married, your parents or family members will tell you that you're not going to come back to our family. You don't have a space here anymore. So what that implies is that stay put. Whether you're dying or you're suffering any form of violence, just stay put. That is also culture. And then the culture that empowers perpetrators in a particular way, let's say someone commits this violence against someone, and you're saying, okay, we have begged. Are you God? Everybody has begged you. Why don't you forgive? Yeah. You know? Or, okay, so are you going to take your husband to court? You know, there is this saying that if you take someone to a police station, you report someone to a police station, or go to court with someone, you might not be friends again forever. So all these social norms that perpetrate, all these acts of violence, they are there. They are all part of our culture. And the fact that some cultures will not even allow a woman to have a voice. They feel that because you're a woman, you just have to stay there. Whatever that is thrown at you, take it. And you cannot open your mouth. You cannot talk back. You cannot express yourself. Just bear it because you're a woman. You're expected to be calm and quiet, and easygoing and all that.
All right. Now, we'll come back to, the whole patriarchal society, later.
Why did she do that?
But, for now, there's so many people and so many organizations that are actually championing this cause. Would like to know how far they've, gone in championing the cause, this particular cause. And we know that, the emphasis of, this year's campaign is time to act now, right? So what transformative actions are we seeing on the ground at the moment?
We have made a lot of efforts in terms of organizations, the government, civil societies that are championing the cause. We have made a lot of efforts and tremendous efforts. We have done that. For instance, because of the advocacy and the movement, the women movements, you see that some of our legal frameworks are strengthened. In Nigeria now we have, of course, the 1999 Constitution, and we have a lot of other laws that derive from the 1999 Constitution. And even before that, remember the CEDAW, the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, and even the United Nations General Assembly on the Eradication of Violence Against Women too, from which the November 25, was bettered. So these are some, because of the efforts that people put in place. And we also have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, 2015 in Nigeria, and a lot of states have domesticated it. Even in Lagos, we also have the law protecting people from domestic violence. We have the Child Rights Act and all that. So all these legal provisions are there because of the advocacy, the efforts that have been put in place. That is one. And again, even in Nigeria, we also have, for instance, the sexual assault referral centers. Now we have about 47 sexual assault referral centers across 22 states in Nigeria. And these are centers that are providing comprehensive care, health, psychosocial support to women, to children, to men who suffer sexual abuse or even rape.
Hang on a second. So men?
Yes, we have men who also suffer.
So men are also victims as well?
Yes, that's why the law, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, says violence against persons, not violence against women. recognizing that gender-based violence can happen even to men. And we have statistics that a lot of men who are also being abused, even sexually through their anus, by other men, can also come and report. Even in terms of physical abuse or emotional abuse. In Lagos, we have the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. And men and women are encouraged to go and report. So going back to these sexual assault referral centers, people can go there, report, and receive care free of charge and professionally delivered to them. Okay, so we have that. We have the National Sex Offenders Register, so that someone who is already convicted on this kind of crime, the name can be there. Some states in Nigeria have the naming and shaming policy. Okay, these are efforts that have been put in place. Even in some states, they have the special courts to try such offenses. Some states who do not have the special court have strengthened their family courts to also try these offenses. We have the family support units and specialized units of the police who can listen, arrest the perpetrator, and also support the survivors. All these are efforts that are put in place. And not forgetting the active role that civil society organizations, the foot soldiers also play in all this.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Now, speaking of these centers, how does the empowerment program help stop the abuse? How does empowering women or men? I'd like you to actually explain to us what are some of these processes or these steps that these centers actually take, to empower these people that help stop the abuse.
Okay, so like some of these, like the sexual assault referral centers, for instance, they have been trained in such a way that when the survivor comes there, we call them survivors, we don't call them victims, because we want, to give hope back to them, that resilience and all that. Dignity. So when they come there, the fact that they are believed in the first place, they might have gone to different places where people judge them or disbelieve them or shame them, but when they arrive as sexual assault referral centers, they are believed, because there are guiding principles, that help us with the work that we do. So you see a survivor saying, well, even if I don't get any justice in terms of getting the perpetrator behind bars, I'm already satisfied that at least someone believes my story. Then apart from that, they are provided comprehensive services free of charge, so they don't get to pay anything. And these comprehensive services include the health services, like the forensic medical examination, head-to-toe examination, checking out for injuries and all that, like the laboratory investigations, and even to take care of the emotional aspect by providing counseling, therapy to deal with the trauma, psychosocial support.
I'm sorry, Juliet. I'm sorry, but nobody knows about this. I guess that's why these kinds of forums are very, very necessary. Well, I exaggerate when I say nobody. But then again, when you look at that, what I've just said, you have to ask yourself, if you're telling us this now, and everybody, well, the viewers are watching, what about those people who are in the hinterlands, the rural areas? How is or are these 16 days of activism? What's the anatomy of this activism when it comes to these people who are in these parts?
Yeah, so in terms of prevention and in terms of also getting the information out there, civil society organizations do a lot. Even government agencies do a lot. Just a few days back, the Lagos State Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation carried out a walk. We also have organizations carrying out work, organizing symposium, organizing forum, organizing conferences. We have the rule of law and anti-corruption program that is being implemented by the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. And they normally have these annual SAC network meetings that just held few days
So
back.
is this activism reaching the grassroots rural members, people?
Yes, even for people that are living in hard-to-reach areas. We have the child protection networks. We have the CSOs, outreaches that go to all these hinterlands, hard-to-reach areas, talking to people. I can tell you in Lagos, a lot of people, even in all those rural communities, now they know they have a voice. They know where they can report. And there are also hotlines where people can call, and they make this available every time. It's not only within this period of activism, even before then and after.
So I'm going to complicate this more, and Dash, and I hope you back me up here. We just came off of a conversation where we talked about the patriarchal nature of the Nigerian society, and this is more so when you go to the rural areas. So what aid would let's say, a lady now who is experiencing or going through all of these, challenges, would she have after she's reported? Does she still have to go back to her rural vicinity where she would be stigmatized, not just by her husband, not just by her husband's family, not the entire community that are stuck in that rooted structure of a patriarchal society?
Okay, so you see, part of what we do is even to engage community leaders, opinion leaders, the ballers, the obas, you know, the gatekeepers. There is one that is currently going on now, organized by the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. So they know about all this, and then we engage them in terms of spreading the news, encouraging people to come and speak out, and providing support for the survivors. So in terms of, well, if you have to go back after abuse to the place of vulnerability in terms of where you live and all that, the choice still remains with the woman, especially if the person is an adult. Okay, but the options are there. And when you visit these facilities, one of the things that we do is what we call informed consent. Seek your consent by explaining all the options and guiding you to making your choices. And if there are some that really need to be rescued, the agencies, the apparatus of the government are on ground to do that. The Lagos State Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, for instance, the Lagos State Ministry of Youth and Social Development, the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, and even civil society organizations, NGOs in Lagos, and even in Nigeria that run shelter. So we work together. We have different groups where people can, you know, report these cases and then get support. But that does not mean that there are no gaps. There are still gaps, you know, in terms of pressure, in terms of threats, in terms of, yes, some people might still not have the information or even deciding on time to come and report. In terms of family pressure and all that, in terms of even people deliberately trying to hide the case. Maybe they say, okay, so you cannot report the palace, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. But once we get to know about it, there are agencies of government that swing into action.
All right, now, I was actually going to ask, you know, what role the government actually plays, but you did mention, you know, one or two. But then, speaking of men who are actually accused mostly or majorly of being the perpetrators of this violence, what role can they play, you know, to support, you know, women who are survivors?
All right. So both men and women can be perpetrators. They can also be survivors. I think I've mentioned it earlier. There is no single profile on a person. You say, okay, I have seen this person. This person looks like a perpetrator. But when it comes to statistics, yes,
exactly.
in terms of reported cases. But again, a lot of men don't come out to report.
That's another one.
Even at that, adult survivors, many of them don't come out to report. You know, when it happens, for instance, sexual abuse, a minor is defiled or sexually abused, everybody, there will be this outrage and this support because it's a child. And people might not want to start asking questions. But when it involves an adult, then people start asking questions. Are you sure that's not the girlfriend? Are you sure this? Are you sure this? And all that and all that. Are you sure it's not because of his house or her house, or you're trying to blackmail or what you wore and all that and all that? Okay, so now, while we are asking that men can get involved and women can get involved, we also want men to champion it. And as it is, there are a lot of he for she's. We call them he for she's. Men champion. Okay, talking about it. Yes, there are a lot of them. There are movements, for instance, Men Against Rape. We have had those movements where men are championing it. Okay, and then we want more men to come because these children, these people that are being abused, the survivors, they are someone's sister, someone's mother, someone's daughter. The youngest person who was sexually abused that is on record was a 3-month-old baby. The oldest was an 82-year-old grandmother. Okay, and we have a lot of young people that are being abused. And who knows, it might be someone's wife tomorrow, you know? So it can happen to anyone. So when men lead this conversation, it helps us a lot. It's seen in the light that it is not all women affairs. That is one. Then secondly, when a man talks to another man, you know, it carries more weight. So it's not like a woman coming to impose something on me and telling me what to do. But this is another man who has a better understanding and then telling you what to do. And again, in terms of positive parenting, responsible parenting, you know, so that man is serving as a role model to the son or to younger men and boys who are looking up to him, okay? And then we have the positive masculinity, not telling people that, see, men are not, they are not wild animals. And your power does not lie in your fist. So as a man, yes, you're a man, you have your masculinity, but you can use it responsibly. So getting men to also get involved in this movement and championing it will help us a lot.
We're at the end of the segment, but I just wanted to fall back on the theme for this year, which is time to act is now. Summarily, could you tell us exactly what that action should be like?
Well, what it should be like is everybody harnessing all the voices together and bringing our attention that this is happening. This is the magnitude. This is the trend. And we need everybody's support. So you see something, you say something, you do something. I also do the same. And we don't just stay aloof and say, well, after all, it's not happening to us. After all, nobody knows whose turn is next. And we have to do it now because we don't want women to keep dying. We don't want men to keep dying. We don't want children to keep dying because of violence. It does not pay anybody. And even in terms of our nation, the economic, cost in terms of how much that is spent in advocacy, how much that is spent in providing comprehensive free services to these people, how much families spend, that is also huge. And then in terms of, you can imagine the emotional trauma they go through. If one person in a family is raped, for instance, the whole family cannot be the same. That child might drop out of school. There will be a lot of confusion. That woman might not continue going to work. That fear of re-victimization, that being paranoid and then suspecting everyone, relationships cannot be the same. So it is time, and the time is now for all of us to gather together, raise our voices, hold our hands together, and say no to sexual and gender-based violence. Say no to violence against women and girls. And we don't want it to happen to us. So if we don't want it to happen to us, let us also not want it to happen to another person. That person that it happens to and we don't support might also become an abuser tomorrow if it is not checked. So now is the time to act. Now is the time to raise the voice. Now is the time to draw attention to that, and of course talk about the prevention too, so that people do not fall a victim. And also encourage survivors and support them and point to them places where they can receive support if it happens.
And how can they protect themselves in like a few seconds?
Yes, how they can, well, through education. The media also has a role to play, okay, educating people, documenting, okay, and then whatever it is,
not
education, sensitization, yes, no. And also showing positive masculinity that, yes, okay, well, my power does not lie in my fist, understanding survivors and supporting them, carrying out outreaches, engagement, advocacies, and the rest.
I was actually thinking pepper spray, but,
Well, final resort, I guess. But thank you very much, Juliet. You are an easier on the eyes Rufai than the one we're all used to seeing on television. But thank you very much for coming through. And it's very interesting because this is very timely, because when our producer brought this to our attention, we thought, oh, we have to do this, and you came in very, very well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
I think we're supposed to have Marshall on this one. If I'm not mistaken, because he had a package being put together for this activism. But what we're going to do now is we're going to show you something that we put together here at New Central, and our producers actually thought that this is our own voice to the movement. Take a look.
The time to act is now.
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 And you're welcome. This is our final segment, and this weekend we shine the brightest spotlight on two trailblazers who embody the very essence of journalistic excellence and also visionary leadership. First, our very own Bettina Mwele, our correspondent whose storytelling has transcended the ordinary to touch hearts and inspire action. Her award-winning report on Nigeria's energy transition plan has not only illuminated the dire need for cleaner cooking options, but also underscores the critical intersection of health, environment, sustainability, and also innovation. Bettina's work is a clarion call to prioritize humanity and the planet, and her recognition is a testament to her relentless commitments to giving voice to untold stories. And then we turn to the towering figure of Kayode Akintemi, Managing Director and Editor-in-Chief of News Central, whose visionary leadership has shaped not just this station, but the entire media landscape. His Lifetime Achievement Award in Media, bestowed by the prestigious Global Impact Awards, is a beacon of what passion, dedication, and also innovation can achieve. This accolade is not just for him, but for every journalist who dares to redefine the narrative and bring unvanished truths to the forefront. Yakaya's career reminds us that the power of media lies in its ability to educate, empower, and transform society.
Now, let's not forget that these exceptional individuals represent a small but mighty fraction of the many who work tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that the news reaches millions of homes, and not just in Nigeria, but across the globe. From the diligent field reporters to the unsung newsroom heroes, the Nigerian media and also journalism community is a mosaic of talent, resilience, and dedication. Now, the challenges are actually, large, misinformation, resource constraints, but our industry continues to thrive, delivering factual reportage and thought-provoking analysis every single day. But at News Central, we are more than just a media organization, for we are a movement fueled by the audacity to tell stories that matter. We are a family of storytellers, investigators, dreamers, and change makers, united by the belief that the truth is worth fighting for. And today, as we celebrate these awards, we're also celebrating the spirit of collaboration, innovation, and excellence that defines us. News Central is not just a channel, it is a legacy in the making, a torchbearer of Africa's narrative, and a trusted companion to our viewers.
So with great pride, very great pride indeed, and joy, we welcome to the show Bettina Nweli, the brilliant correspondent whose groundbreaking report has sparked conversation on sustainable living, and Ekemini Jane Essien, who graciously received the Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of Mr. Kayode Akintemi. They're joining us here. You are welcome, ladies. Good to have you both here.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be on the show today.
You deserve every bit of accolade.
There's no ladies first here because you're both ladies. What was it like? First, let me ask. You collected you received the award, the Lifetime Award for the boss,
yes,
Mr.
Yes,
Kayode.
I did.
What was that like? What was it like when he was announced and all? Oh, by the way, can I have that? Hold that for safekeeping here.
Careful with that. Careful.
Careful. I'll be taking this home. Do tell us.
Well, it was a very profound moment, really, because, like you mentioned, he's such a beacon. He's a towering beacon. That's the exact phrase. And to have him receive this award, or for me to even receive this award on his behalf, it was very humbling. To see the mark that he has made in the media, to see the mark that he has made in news coverage as a journalist and as a leader, to have that recognized, it was very, very beautiful.
Those are big shoes to fill in.
He actually talked about, I want to know, in that moment, as soon as his name was mentioned, what was, the crowd like? What happened? How did you feel? And then, what happened within the crowd?
Well, let me start with how did I feel. When I heard his name mentioned, I think in that moment I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm the person who has the honor to even just represent this person in this moment, right? And the crowd, everybody was so, it was a very spectacular moment. The award was presented by Alibaba, and he was talking about how Mr. Kayode was one of the first people to interview him. He actually called him the gray-haired one. He's really such a legend, and there are lots of people who are making their mark in news coverage and in journalism who are actually standing on his shoulders and on the bricks that he has put in place. So it really was such it was an awe-inspiring, humbling moment for me.
That's beautiful. And let's come to the one and only world-class Bettina Nweli. You received 2 awards in the space of 1 month.
Yes, I did.
You must be doing something right.
I must be, because, first of all, I would like to appreciate the team at News Central, the management at News Central TV, because if not for News Central, I do not think that I would have received those 2 awards, because, the company has provided everything I need, from resources to, travel and all of that. I think News Central reporters are one of the very few reporters around the country that get to travel out and cover events. If you have followed all we've done from beginning of the year, we were at the U.S. elections, we were at the UNGA, we were at the COP29.
Yeah.
You know, we've been around, this year alone, I can count like, you know, almost 8 countries that our reporters have been to cover stories. And now these stories, when you travel outside the country and you get to see how things are done, it sort of adds color to when you come back and you are doing your own reportage, you know, home base. It's something that helps, adds fruitful life to your career, and it just makes the story more blissful, better.
Entertaining to tell.
Exciting to tell. Exactly.
Talking about stories being exciting to tell. Now, you received the awards on environmental or climate journalism, right?
Yes.
What does this say about, you know, the evolution of environmental journalism? It wasn't there a few years ago. And
it wasn't quite prominent a few years ago, but with the fight against climate change that has, you know, taken the world by storm, now everybody is trying to create a niche for themselves. And apart from that, we all see what climate change is doing around the world, especially in Nigeria. All the floods, the weather fluctuations, extreme weather changes that we have, these things are things that we need to pay attention to. Now, the story that I did was on clean cooking in Nigeria. I did a story on the people of Makoko. Now, if you go to Makoko and you see the way these women live, it's like a tradition that they have lived for years. Now, they cook with firewood and charcoal, and these things affect their health. So they now drug themselves up at night just so they can sleep, just so they can live normal lives. But they're not even aware that the way of life of their cooking is what is affecting their health. So it was a big deal to go there and see for myself what these people do. And also not forgetting that Makoko is one of the biggest exporters of smoked fish in Africa. So they are very particular about how this fish comes out. They don't want the standards to drop.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
Wow, very interesting. We're almost out of time, but we really don't want to stop the segment. But I'm going to ask one final question to you, Ekemini. Now, you were representing Mr. K, and you've also worked as his executive assistant for, you know, for a while now. You're one person who knows exactly what he goes through on a daily basis. We don't. We just wait for him to sign every end of the month. Like, okay, we've been paid.
I do a lot of things. Oh, come on.
But tell us about, in summary, if you can, his everyday life, what he has to go through to actually keep an organization like this going. Is it easy? Is it a walk in the park?
I think the best way to answer this would be to not look at it from the level of difficulty, but from the importance of it. Mr. Kayode is a very intentional leader. He's very thoughtful. There's a lot of thought that goes into the day-to-day of News Central. Like even us sitting here right now, how the station is represented, how the staff is cared for, how the standard is put forth, and it's, yes, like there's such intentionality behind it, and intentionality takes time, it takes energy, it takes a lot of work, right? But what's so beautiful is when we get to see things like this, is moments like this where it's recognized, where it's appreciated, not just so people can applaud you, but so you can see the change that is being made all over the world when we cover things like our town hall, you know, doing it in the diaspora, and you know, like Bettina mentioned, we were at the US election, we're at COP29. We're not doing these things just to say, oh, look at us, we're everywhere, but we understand, he understands how important it is for these stories to be told, for these communities to be represented, and there's a lot of intention that goes into leading such a force. And so on a day-to-day, I can tell you for sure that, you know, we don't necessarily wake up thinking, how easy is it going to be today? We think, you know, how much work needs to be put in to achieve this result. Like, it's just following through on that.
Well, a huge congratulations to Mr. Kayode and Bettina Onweli.
If it was allowed, I'll jump over the coffee table and give you a hug. But I can't, but also want to say...
We'll get the hug after the show.
Say, thank you.
Every other person, especially News Central staff who have actually received awards and have also been nominated this year.
There she is with her award.
Yeah.
Looking as delectable as always. Who else did we have? We had quite a number of people.
Yeah, we had Rosemary as well.
Rosemary as well. Fantastic. And we
I think the Jassiri ladies also won.
The Jassiri ladies, exactly.
Yeah.
How could I forget? It's a fantastic year for us, and I'm glad that these awards are coming in. I'll be taking.
I'll be taking
taking
this.
it out.
No.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And guys, look at the bright side. The year is not even over yet.
Like December hasn't even started.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you guys expect mine very soon for Breakfast Extra. And this is what I would like to say. Thank you very much for joining us for the Saturday edition. We've enjoyed it as much as you have, we hope. Join us again tomorrow for the Sunday edition of our Breakfast Extra. We'll be talking about something very interesting and also starting the show on a very interesting note as well. So you want to tune in for that one. Any goodbyes, Dashin?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for, watching. And I don't want to say I'll see you tomorrow, but we might.
I would love to have you on tomorrow.
But I had so much fun as well on the show.
Thank you very much for sitting in.
Yes.
Don't worry, Judith will be back soon. She's only in France
again,
helping the president transcribe pidgin English.
Oui.
Au revoir. Merci beaucoup. Segobe.
Buongiorno.